listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Hell yes, here we go. GM Shuffle, the big guy, Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher. Post-Thanksgiving, which we'll get to, Week 13 concludes tonight. Monday Night Football in Denver. Peyton doing a hell of a job. 7-5 Broncos hosting the 3-8 Browns. Right now, Denver, 6.5, a low total, 41.5, 42. We'll get to that. Also, the NFC is kind of wild right now. We're going to get to these odds. The West, the North, and the South, unbelievably tight. Before we do that, we hope you and your families had a great Thanksgiving. Michael Lombardi, to you as well.
Yes.
How we doing?
We're good. I mean, wow, what a great 4 days of nothing but football, college, pro. I mean, it just really was tremendous. It was fun. It was great. Family, friends. I didn't have my kids around me, which is unfortunate, but it was still good. And, you offset all of not having family. I got a lot of football to watch. It was good. It was fun.
Is there anything that's the Thanksgiving? There is nothing like that Thursday. Because the vibes are the rest of the country. A lot of people do have to work, but everybody's just kind of doing the same thing, hanging out, eating food, watching. It's just the best vibes possible.
You know what I love, Patrick, is everybody said nobody's going to watch the Dallas-Washington game. I think they had 38 million people watch it. Like, are you kidding me? Everybody was going to watch it. It was going to be on TV. It was going to be, whether it was in the background, and I think the betting helps make up for the lack of interest. If we didn't have the national betting scope, right? Are the Giants going to cover, the Cowboys going to cover, all that crap, then maybe there wouldn't be. But the fact is we had that betting market there. It's so good. And who's not going to watch it? I mean, seriously, we're all going to watch it. We watched it Friday. We watched it Saturday, Sunday. We'll watch it tonight. It's tremendous because I don't know about you, but I can't believe we're going into week 14. I mean, this is no, it just felt like the offseason.
If there is a God, slow it down, God.
The offseason doesn't move this mess. I'm not ready to talk about Joel Embiid's knee for the next 6 months. I can tell you that right now.
We're breaking down futures in July. Get us the hell out of here. Now, Matt Eberflus got the hell out of Chicago after he left. Now, let me just explain this. So 23-20, the Lions win. They move to 11-1. Everybody knows what happened at the end where Eberflus said the final drive was done the right way. Caleb was a disaster in the first half, but showed you why he was the number one pick. In the second half, I thought Chicago was great. It was a great way to start Thanksgiving. I was sitting with friends that had no clue, Michael, what football was. And they were screaming, why aren't they using a timeout? What I'm telling you is my sister was screaming at the TV, doesn't he have to call a timeout here as Chicago let the clock expire? Walk us through everything.
Well, let's start with the 4th and 14. They did a horrible job of not showing us, was it pass interference? I couldn't tell. You as a Lions fan, did you think that was pass interference on the 4th and 14?
Oh, that absolutely was not. We got a freebie there.
That was unbelievable, right? 4th and 14, they called it on that kid, Vider on Detroit, and they gave him the play. I mean, that kept the game alive, right? I mean, that play there, I don't know if that play, Eberflus might look back on that play and say that play, if it goes against him, probably he's still coaching the team this week, right? Think about the margins here, right? If they don't make, and I never saw it. CBS never showed us a good replay of that. But all right, so anyway, they get that break, which was a huge break. So they go 1st and 10. Caleb throws a pass incomplete. Here comes mistake number one, okay? Mistake number one, off an incomplete pass, Eberflus calls his second timeout. Now, I don't know why he had to do it, but obviously there was some communication problems. I mean, this is after an incomplete pass. They blow their second timeout. All right, so now it's 2nd and 10. He throws a pass for 12 yards, get the first down. Of course, they get illegal use of hands. That's enforced. No play. Clock stops. 43 seconds. 2nd and 20. All right. 2nd and 20. Now, Caleb, we can't take a sack. We can't take a sack. We can't take a sack. But we got one timeout left. So what does he do? He takes a sack, and Eberflus doesn't take the timeout. Now, the golden rule in 2-minute game management is if you get sacked, you got to use the timeout. By the time, even though you're at the Detroit 35 and the players aren't that far, they got to come back, get to the line of scrimmage, hear the play call. Now, let's go the opposite side here. So Eberflus is thinking, if I call a timeout here, I can't save my timeout. So I don't know if he did this, but I'm sure he might have said in the headset, hey, Thomas, just call a short pass and we'll use a timeout. Okay? Just call a short stick, Y stick, which is what he did. Here's the problem. Now, Eberflus is completely at blame here. I'm not but Caleb Williams is at blame too.
Agreed.
Caleb decides he gets to the line of scrimmage after all this time's been lost, right? He gets to the line of scrimmage and he hand signals a stop and go to Rome Odunze. You can see it on the cut up of the tape. He hand signals it. Odunze acknowledges it. So he changes the play. So when Eberflus says he wouldn't do it differently, he's right in one sense. That he didn't do it differently. He should have but the quarterback basically neglected the call and went rogue on him and threw it and got him fired. Now, both of them are to blame, more Eberflus than Caleb, but this Caleb issue transcends itself to the next question you're going to ask me is, who's the next coach?
Well, hold on. Before we get to that, because you have a great quote from the McCaskey family, and we'll talk about applying that to the next head coach at the Chicago Bears. Agreed, Caleb, he seemed to get lost in the moment, changing the play. But that also falls on Eberflus that there wasn't communication. He didn't have Caleb prepared in that spot. So you get what I'm saying. As it's happening, are you yelling at the television? Like we watched, fuck, Nance was going, what are they doing? What are they doing? Like, it was unbelievable.
Well, because the rule is we get sacked, we got to call timeout. Now, here's what you have to do, right? Now, he's saving that timeout because he doesn't want to use his Mayday kick field goal team.
Right.
He doesn't want to use that. But that's why you practice that every single week, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week. You're practicing Mayday field goals. You have to. Right? So let's say he calls timeout. He comes out in the huddle. He goes to Caleb, look, we're locking this. We want to run Y stick. They'll give us 6 yards. As soon as we complete the pass, it's 4th down. Here comes the field goal. You can't spike it. Like, you go over the situation with them in the huddle, right? You go over it. Okay, we're going to run stick. Hey, you got to throw the ball here. We got to get a completion. We're going to run to the line, and we're going to send the field goal. You're coming off the field. Everybody understand it? It's like when Belichick went to Brendan Donovan and he went to Brian Flores at the end of the Ram game. Look, there's 12 plays left to go in this game. Make sure everybody knows what to do on all 12. That's why you call timeout, to make sure everybody knows what to do. That's the job of a head coach. But again, we're into this coordinator, which is just ridiculous, and we have no game management. And look, he got fired for it. The 4th and 14, the timeout that gets neglected after the pass incomplete, I was screaming on that one. Like, what are we doing? We just had an incomplete pass. Let's go. We got to get the ball going. You know, your clock's not running, but we can't. That 25-second, and then we call timeout? I mean, here's the thing. Was 5 yards worth it? Let's just say, hypothetically, let's say that they were running short on the play clock and the 25-second was going to creep up on them on the 1st and 10 after the incomplete pass. So now it would have been 2nd and 15. Would you rather have 2nd and 15 and 2 timeouts, or 1st and 10 and only 1 timeout?
Right.
I think that's the question, right? That's the question.
You're right. You're right. It preceded the mess. You're right.
There's always something that happens before the calamity. Right? Correct. There's always something happens. You know, something happened to Custer before he got run over. Now, we don't know what the hell it was, but we know something happened.
We know there was one last stand, and that was Eberflus's last stand.
Exactly. So, like, something happened. And so, like, that's the part that, like, when you blow that, I got 2 timeouts, no big deal. I'll give you an example. Mayo blows a timeout this weekend, and we'll get to this weekend later. But Mayo blows a timeout on the 2-point play to take a Kodak. He wanted to see what they were going to run. Okay? So now he's down to 1 timeout when he gets the ball back. If he has 2 timeouts, that 68-yarder, he might be able to now throw something else. Right? Timeouts, like in the 4th quarter, if I were a head coach, I would tell everybody, nobody fucking calls timeout unless I do. Like, nobody's calling. Like, no player calls timeout. No assistant coach calls timeout. Unless I call timeout, there's no timeouts. Because I'd rather be in 2nd and 15, 1st and 15 with 2 timeouts than 1st and 10 with 1.
Yep.
They're going to give 5 yards. They're going to give it to me no matter what I do.
That's a great point. And it's funny, when the game ended, you saw Dan Campbell, the Lions were like, wait, it's over? They did that? You could tell they were.
Yeah. Everybody was shocked. I thought the clock was screwed up at first. I thought that, I mean, it was almost like the episode of Sopranos where it went black. Everybody had this, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? What happened?
It really was. Well, what a start to Thanksgiving. And then you obviously heard the report. We'll talk about the potential next coach, but you heard the report. Eberflus stands up in front of the team, and I think it was Johnson, the cornerback, that just interrupted him and just said, this is completely unacceptable. So he had lost the room.
Well, when you lose this many close games, what is he's 5-21
They
in
were
close
4-2. They were 4-2 before the Hail Mary.
Yeah, I mean, so he lost so many close games. But again, he's going to sit there in his home in Chicago and wonder what happened to my head coaching tenure. And the problem is he had nobody helping him be a head coach. That is essentially the problem. This guy knew nothing about game management. He knew nothing about how to set up a game. I mean, he's playing his defense. Everybody said this summer, you did 1,000 shows this summer. So did I. Everybody was betting the Bears on the over total. Everybody was betting them. I kept saying they're not good enough. Remember how much shit I took for them when they went ahead and gave a second-round pick to Washington for Sweat? I said they could have signed Sweat in free agency. Oh, then he comes in and gets 7.5 sacks, and everybody's shoving it up my ass. Oh, you're an idiot. Look what we got. How's Sweat doing for you lately? You paid him all this money. Is he a dominating? No, of course he's not. He's a good player. But I don't want to give up a 2 for him. I'd rather pay him. I paid him anyway.
11-1, the Lions v. 9-3 Packers on Thursday night. 3.5, the Packer getting bet when we come back. Silver and Black Friday. What the hell was that? GM Shuffle.
Only Antonio.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back to the GM Shuffle, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Again, hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving. It was great football into Black Friday. We'll get to the Chiefs, another improbable win, but we're just closing out this Bears talk. If you have it, Michael Lombardi, of course, I'm Patrick Meagher here on the GM Shuffle. If you have the quote, so it's a good job. You call the Bears a good job because they have a quarterback. We'll get to the potential candidates, but I think you have from the McCaskey family, who in 100+ years had never fired a coach in season. They reversed that, fire Eberflus. And what are they looking for, Michael Lombardi, in Chicago?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. George McCaskey and his blue check marked on X. So I assume this is true, and he pinned it in there. And so the Chicago, so I don't know. He only has 3,200 followers. So I can't, maybe this is not, but he said that George McCaskey's got a picture of himself up there. The Chicago Bears have officially begun their search for our next head coach. Our aim is to find a leader who embodies the spirit of our team and community. We're looking for a coach with innovative strategies, a commitment to player development, and a passion for winning. Stay tuned for updates on this exciting journey. Now, can we say something? Who doesn't want to have a passion for winning? Like, who doesn't? Like that's like saying when you come to a job interview, I'm going to work hard. Well, fucking, of course you're going to work hard. You got to work hard. So, the thing I love is it embodies the spirit of our team and community. He might want to go down the hall and tell Ryan Poles that they play in Chicago and it's bad weather. And if you have a shitty offensive line in Soldier Field, you can't block anybody. It's probably not a good idea. You might want to do that. If you're thinking about the community, why don't you have that conversation with your general manager? I mean, everybody thinks it's going to be an easy job to hire because of Caleb. I think it's going to be a harder job than you think it is. Because I think you walk in because, yeah, Caleb's talented, but it ain't going to be Caleb's fault if you don't win. It ain't going to be Caleb. Now, Lincoln Riley's probably sitting there saying, I should get this job. And USC would probably pay for the jet to have him go back there and take it, because that's never going to end up well, USC and Lincoln Riley. You talk about a marriage made in hell right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, you should get the toaster back on if you gave a wedding gift to that marriage, right? You should get the toaster back on that one, because that was never going to work. So I don't know. I think, to me, I said this all off season on the pod. I said every time I saw Eberflus, it looked like he had bad gas. He just looked like a man who was going to die, right? And because he knew he had to pick Caleb, but he knew there were things with Caleb that you had to accept that you probably weren't going to change. He's kind of a different guy. He's not exactly, he's a little on that Kyler Murray program,
Yeah.
And so this is a delicate balance. How do you get him on your team as opposed to being somebody who fights you from within?
Okay, so we were joking when you read that to us during the break. Let's distill that McCaskey edict. We want a good play caller, because we've got our first-round draft pick, and we'll get to Bryce Young in just a little bit. If you don't develop that person, your organization for the next decade is screwed. The obvious answer is Ben Johnson. Another obvious would be Cliff Kingsbury, because he coached. Obviously, Caleb Williams. But let's get the elephant out of the way. Is there any way Belichick would be interested in going to Chicago, if that's an option?
No, I can't speak for him. It's not fair for me to say, but just based on the dynamics of how they're set up, I don't think that would work. Kevin Warren, the president of his team, is going to have a lot to say. Let's be clear. Kevin Warren might have an office downtown Chicago and talking about building a stadium, but he's going to have a lot to say. He's running the team, just like Ted Phillips before him ran the team. Whether it was Jerry Angelo, Ryan Pace, Ryan Poles, Phil Emery, they all had a report to the president. And so, you may carry the title of general manager. You don't necessarily hold the authority of the general manager. Like we could just see the mechanics of the firing of Eberflus tells you that nobody has the authority other than the owner. Right? Because if Ryan Poles wanted to fire him and he had the authority, and Monday morning he would have said to the PR guy, Ted Cruz, nope, no press conference, I'm firing the guy. Right. But because Eberflus goes and gives himself, talks about it, now we know, and then he gets fired after the Zoom call, then there obviously was there had to be some kind of, we had a committee together, because we love those committees. Let's have a committee meeting and see where we go. And I think that's going to be it. Look, do they have some good players? There's no question. But they need a supreme commander. They don't need somebody to come in and call plays. They need somebody to fix their team, because now they're going from the Eberflus zone high school scheme, read the quarterback's eyes, make every quarterback look better who can throw the ball. You got to win with your front. We're not good enough up front. And you got a general manager who's on a program that's different than the scheme program. The separation between the GM and the head coach in terms of philosophically being aligned was night and day.
Do you think Vrabel will be in the mix?
I think he should be. Yeah, I think he should. I mean, Mike's worked in these kind of environments, although Mike might be reluctant to walk back into a situation because he just got let go by Rand Carthon, because Rand Carthon loved Will Levis. And so I think Mike, if I'm Mike, I'm going to be a little careful. I'm not walking back into the situation I had before. I'm just not going to do it. I'm too young. I could say no and still be a good coach.
Correct. Yeah. He can now sit back and have his pick. So if I said this to you, and we'll get to the Raiders and Chiefs, if I said it's going to come down to a Ben Johnson or a Cliff Kingsbury, do you think I'm on the right track?
I don't know if they could sell Cliff to the Chicago media. I think they would have a better chance at selling Lincoln Riley.
Okay.
I think Lincoln Riley would want this job badly. And
you're right.
I think he would want this job badly. They want out, he wants out. The problem is the divorce settlement costs too much money. Right. And so, and that's what's going on in college football right now. See, college football, what people don't understand about college football, you can't fire the coach as easily as you did before, because you got a $15 million payroll you got to adhere to. Right. So unless the coach is in the last year of his deal or doesn't have a significant buyout, like they probably in the old days, they probably would have fired Brian Kelly down in LSU. They might have fired Billy Napier at Florida because he hadn't won in 3 years. But because of the buyouts so strong And not that they can't afford to pay it, but now they got to pay $15 million. I think that becomes a little bit of an issue.
Okay, so 3 games on Thanksgiving, then we had Black Friday. So in this one, the Chiefs were laying 13.5. They don't cover, but they do pick up a win. They're 11-1, 19-17 over the Raiders. Who wants a house in Summerlin? I think your son might have one for somebody, but the Raiders, okay? Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. It's almost like O'Connell was a gamer in the second half, and then all of a sudden it just fell apart. Walk me through it.
Well, I mean, look, the Raiders ran the football for the first time all year. Give Scott Turner credit, right? They were able to run the ball against a Chief team that nobody really even tries to run the ball on them. They had 25, they averaged 4.6 a carry. The McCormick running back, he did good. So they throw for 340 in the game. Think about that. They throw for 340, and it all comes down to they have the great drive at the end of the game. He's got the ball at the Kansas City 32, so it's, a 49-yard field goal if it does. There were 15 seconds on the clock. The reasoning for running the other play on third down, the reason for this play was because Antonio, in his infinite wisdom, didn't want to give Mahomes any more time. Are you sure? They had 2 timeouts, right? They had 2 timeouts, and once you kick the ball, that would have been 15 seconds. It would have gone down to 10. So it would have been 10 seconds. If you put the ball in bounds on the kickoff, how could they have come back on you?
Right.
But that's what he decided to do.
Is Antonio Pierce the head coach of the Raiders next year?
I can't imagine it. I mean, I can't. You can't put up a sign. You can't put up the sign that says commitment to excellence and then have Antonio Pierce as your head coach. What are you committed to with that? Now, I mean, they've gotten better since they got rid of Luke Getsy, and the offense has gotten better. Defense still isn't good. I think the bigger question on Black Friday wasn't what deals Amazon was having. It was these Chiefs, again, on a national stage. The Chiefs leave you believing that if they can win a Super Bowl with that team, the way that team is playing, then, credit Andy Reid, because they can't block anybody at tackle. I've been saying it all year. You know that, right? I mean, the left tackle stinks. The right tackle's not very good. I mean, and the Raiders abused them, and good teams are going to abuse them. I mean, they're going to have a hard time beating a good team. Like I don't think they could beat Philly with Philly's front.
No, you could tell Mahomes coming off after another sack was pissed about the tackle play. Like that is.
Oh, that's why they moved Tooney out there to tackle.
Yeah.
That's why they had to move Tooney. Now they signed DJ Humphries, right? So they might put him in this week. But it's Thursday. I don't know if he's ready to play, nor do I think he's any good. He's coming off a major injury. But you're right. He was so pissed off, Patrick.
And he doesn't generally get demonstrative like that. But talk about winning on the margins. We'll get to the Vikings coming up in just a bit. The Chiefs are 11-1. And it doesn't feel like they scare anybody. But no, it's just you have the Mahomes and Reid factor. Yeah, like you said, the Raiders ran all over. Like, this is a Chiefs defense.
Do you think they have home field advantage for you think they end up beating out Buffalo for home field? I mean, they have to lose one more game. They got the Chargers at home. I mean, I think that's the question. Do we think they can lose a game? I mean, because Buffalo, the way they looked last night in the snow and the way they're finally playing a Western New York offense, they look pretty good. I mean, look, to beat Buffalo, you have to be willing to take 4-yard gains and not lose sight. You got to just keep moving the ball down the field. If they lose home field to Kansas City, I know they didn't have it last year, but they're vulnerable. They really are. I mean, they should have lost to Denver. They should have lost to the Raiders.
No, you're 100% right. Carolina. In Carolina, yeah. I mean, that was overtime. The Bills. So we'll get to them coming back because 2 of the late games yesterday had a lot of ramifications and fascinating. So the Eagles pick up the 24-19, late score by the Ravens. So 24-19 really dominated from that second quarter on, which we'll get to. The Eagles now 10-2. And then you mentioned the Bills, throw away the season for the 49ers. McCaffrey looks like he's done for the year. 35-10 win for the Bills. We're going to come back and discuss those. What's fascinating about the Eagles is they have their division wrapped up. The rest of the NFC will come back with the odds completely wide open. We'll continue talking Week 13 of the NFL here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, the big guy Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher. Just to wrap this up, so the Chiefs are minus 150 to wrap up the 1 seed in the AFC. Michael laid it out. It doesn't get easier for a team that keeps winning by one score. By the way, a ton of one-score games in Week 13 yesterday. We're going to get to the wrap-up. In the NFC, the Lions are minus 160 for that 1 seed, but the team we're talking about next, the Philadelphia Eagles, are plus 190 to get the 1 seed. So there's a lot to unpack here. Michael, the Philadelphia Eagles, they won a million straight. They're 10-2, 24-19 over the Ravens. They fall behind 9-0 early, and then that second quarter explosion. The defense is – Fangio's got this defense playing great. On the other side, there is a Justin Tucker conversation that needs to be had. Let's jump into the Eagles and Ravens here.
You know how I always talk about, you have to figure out why you win and why you lose. And I think Philly did a really good job last year of deciding that. 2 years ago when Hurts was really good, they had Miles Sanders and they could run the ball. So they signed Barkley. They took care of that. But the other area that they took care of that really was hidden was the fact that their performance, their ability to stay in shape, their conditioning as a team, the injuries that they suffered. They fired this Peter DeLuca, who was their head guy, orthopedic guy. They let him go after the Super Bowl. They tried to change all that. And Howie Roseman went back to DeLuca, hired him back, which was a huge admission by Howie that he made a mistake. And they changed their entire peak performance development program because they were on the tracker program, which is what the Bengals are on, Patrick. So whatever the tracker says, that's what we do. Players too tired, stop practicing. Okay. Well, that's what the Bengals, they stop practicing. They don't, but you could just see by the Bengals' performance defensively, they don't practice, right? They have no toughness as a team. It's because they're on the tracker program. Well, Philly was on that tracker program too, and they had a bunch of fat defensive linemen and they couldn't play. So they changed that. And now Jalen Carter looks like a power forward in football, in basketball. Jordan Davis looks better. Milton Williams looks better. Sweat, they're better. And then Vic comes in and he gets them to play with the two rookies in the secondary. And now they're playing really good as a team, as a unit. And they're a hard team. I mean, if you'd have told me before the game that Philadelphia was going to have 118 yards passing, I'd have told you you're full of crap, that they would win that way. But they found a way to win the game, without being very good offensively. They averaged 4.7 per play, only threw the ball 19 times. And look, I give Joystick a ton of shit, but at least Joystick admits now that he better run the ball. He better call runs because the more passes he calls, the dangerous it becomes for the team. And Vic might kill him.
Well, they called 33 runs, and Barkley, again, continues, 23, 107, and a touchdown. He had a long at 25. But could your DJ down in Miami not continue to use Vic Fangio? Like, why was Vic available?
Well, because the DJ, that was another marriage that you can get the toaster back on. Because that was never going to work. I said it when those two got together. I mean, the disc jockey and Vic. I mean, Vic's playing Sinatra and the disc jockey's playing rap. I mean, like those two couldn't go together in a million years. I mean, there's no way they couldn't agree on one. They couldn't agree on the appetizer if they went to a restaurant. I mean, those two guys. But plus, the disc jockey doesn't want to coach the team. He only wants to call plays. And so he doesn't want the team to work too hard. That's the problem. You remember the quotes when Vic left? How all the players didn't like Vic. He was too hard on. It was too tough, bro. Okay, well, that's why we're not winning. You want to be soft. Here we go. So that's why. And Vic comes in, and I'm sure, look, is Vic easy to get along with? There's a great Steve Jobs quote. Steve Jobs was telling that Joey Ivy guy, the British guy, he says, Joey, you're a little bit too much in part of your own ego. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he says, you want people to like you. And that's because your ego, you want to feel nice. You want people to like you. And if you're going to be a great leader, you're going to have to move people. And they may not like it, but at the end of the day, they'll fall in love with you. Your ego will get rewarded in the long haul, not the short term. And he's right. And so, our man, the disc jockey down there, all he cares about is, being quirky, and he thinks it sells. And the team has no toughness. But Philly, give them credit. They identified their problems. They said, look, we got to start. We got to get our defensive line in shape. We got to get better in the secondary, and we got to add a running back. And they did all those three things. That, to me, is why they're good. They figured out why they lost, and they figure out why they won.
And Sirianni, he got the buzz cut, kind of chilled out a little bit. You can tell that he's trying to get out of the way a little bit. And again, as a Lions fan, we should talk about the North because the Lions are hosting Green Bay coming up Thursday. Michael, we'll have another pod before, but we should talk. If I'm a Lions fan, there's one team that concerns me. I'm not worried about the Chiefs. It's in conference. It's the Eagles. Those are the two best teams in football right now.
You know what's fascinating about Philadelphia? Because I worked there, and I know Jeffrey Lurie believes you throw the ball to get the lead. I know that. They're last in passing attempts in the National Football League. They're first in rushing attempts. But here's the one that really blows me away. The last 5 games, Patrick, they have run the ball for more yards than they've passed. Think about that. 5 games in a row, they have run. Jacksonville, 237 to 210. Dallas, 187 to 161. Washington, 228 to 206. L.A. Rams, 314 to 167. Yesterday, 140 to 112. I mean, that's remarkable. And people say, don't pay running backs and the running game sucks. Well, they got a great line. They have a way to make plays down the field of the passing game. You know, it still works. Football. That's the amazing thing about football. For all this talk that the game's changing, it still comes down to blocking and tackling. It really does. But you're right. This team is the one I would be most fearful for. That's why I think, and I'd love to hear your commentary on this, home field advantage. Would you feel better if they had the one, or would you think Goff could play as good in Philly if he had to?
No, I don't feel. I'm not being a Goff hater. I need Goff in 72 degrees in Ford Field. I need him comfortable because and right now the Lions $1.60 favorite to get that 1 seed. The Eagles plus 190 in conference NFC, and we should talk about the NFC North because we got a great matchup coming up. You got your Big Daddy late night Thanksgiving. Miami didn't want to be there. We saw Miami on Peacock last year in Kansas City not show up because it was cold. Josh J, like you know what I'm saying? Like that was a miss.
And what we talked about the shoes, right? We talked about not slipping, right? They just saw the 49ers miss 15 tackles in the first quarter. And you would think that they would be the same way I was, which we're going to wear the right shoes, fellas. But the first punt return, the guy slipped. That's why he dropped the ball. That's why the kid dropped the ball. He slipped. Like that field, if you don't deal with that field from the first day you start preparing for the Packers, you're screwed.
But you've been talking, how is this possible? We've been working together forever. You've been talking about that field at Lambeau for years. How is an organization like Miami going up there not overly prepared for that? I'm blown away.
I don't understand it either, but Detroit knows how to deal with it. Minnesota knows how to do it because they play there twice every year. So they know it. You got to understand it. When you're watching the tape and you see a field goal kicker just fall right on his ass like it's the Follies, wait a minute, what's going on here? And if you don't wear the right shoes, like that kid did not have the right shoes on, and you lose out. It's just horrible. But again, that conversation comes from somebody who's watching the game from 35,000 feet. Like if you ask me to call plays, I can't do that. But if you ask me to handicap both teams at 35,000 feet, that's what I've trained my life to do. That's what I do. Whereas somebody's got to have somebody who's a 35,000 feet thinker in the building. You have to. McDaniel, he don't have that. He's too. Be nice. Let's go to Dairy Queen after practice. I drive my Bentley over with everybody in it.
Your boy Sam Darnold. I'm watching Darnold. He wants to give the ball to the other team, but a little rally for the Vikings, a 23. If anything, you have to say O'Connell. There's something to it because he keeps winning these 23-22. There is some. They're 10-2. They're in the mix.
They're 10-2
Vikings.
And I do. I have a question for you. Ponder this for a minute. If you're the 49ers, Sam Darnold's a free agent, and you got to do Purdy's contract, who would you rather have, Purdy or Darnold?
Me, and I'm probably unpopular. I swear I'd rather have Darnold.
I don't think you're unpopular. I don't think he would be unpopular. I think that's the question that the 49ers and I think some other teams have to answer. Like, I know we want to say Sam's turns the ball over. Yeah, he does, but so does Kirk Cousins 4 times. Made $100 million, right? But Sam's really talented. The problem with Purdy is are you sure the talent level's as high as you've got to have?
I totally agree. I don't know if the ceiling's there.
I used to say, I don't know if I told you, Al Davis was obsessed with pedigree. Pedigree was, where was he drafted? And so he would make me count how many first, second, and third round picks were on the team. Now, they didn't have to be picks from your team. They could have been from some other team. And he wanted to always have 31 first, second, and third round picks on the team. It's all pedigree, right? Because he felt like those were the best players in college. There's something there. Maybe somebody missed something, right? And so the whole argument, when I watch Purdy and I watch how successful Darnold's been, as much as I love Purdy, I realize there is a pedigree issue here, right? And if you're the Niners and Purdy wants $60 million, you can't pay that. You can't pay that because you're going to lose your whole team, right? Now, if Purdy wants to have a modest contract, yeah, okay, now we can work something out. But again, it comes down to pedigree. Does he have enough?
Daniel Jones out of Jersey. He looked like he was in a good mood there with Minnesota. And Minnesota now 10-2. Green Bay, they're right in the mix. Look at this number. Open 5.5. Detroit bet down to 3.5. Green Bay getting some love on the board on Thursday night. That's going to be.
Well, I think a lot of this is injury. The
Lions are. I mean, they just signed Jamal Adams, your boy.
I know. I bet they're going to play him at linebacker. I bet you they're going to play Jamal Adams at inside linebacker and just say, okay, you're going to be a nickel and we're going to rush you and we're going to, I think they're going to have to kind of handle that role. Because that will, if he can't play safety, we know that.
No, I don't want that dude on my team. Now, Baby Campbell can do something with him. When we come back here, GM Shuffle, Week 13 into Cleveland and Denver tonight, we'll get takeaways from everything that happened yesterday, Thanksgiving, Black Friday. GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
GM Shuffle, we'll get to the DraftKings crowning moments here coming up in just a bit with the awards, Week 13. Michael Lombardi, we're back from Thanksgiving. Hope you and your family had a great one. Let's run the board, and then we'll get to the moments. And we'll start with the freaking Russo. So you had 3.5 with the Texans. They win by 3. The big story here, 23-20. The Texans beat the Jags. Obviously, Lawrence horrible. One of the bigger hits. It was hard to watch, to be fair.
Hard to watch. Yeah, it was really hard to watch. And what was even harder to watch was the behavior of the kid, Alshir. I don't know how to say his last name.
Yeah, no,
and so to me, his behavior and his reaction to it, he had to get thrown out. If he would have tried to go back on the field, they would have killed him. I mean, they would have killed him. I mean, and his teammates tried to get him off. And the behavior of the Texans bothered me too. I didn't feel like there was any control going on. It was hard. Now, I get those situations are difficult, but to me, the league's got to suspend them. Look, the one thing I think we saw this weekend in college football and now in pro, we can't have these melees. I mean, this whole idea that you're going to put your flag on the other team, that's great, but there's repercussions that come with it, And so if we're going to have rivalry week, we got to have peaceful rivalries. And let's determine it on the field, not by a flag. And this hit was really bad, and I thought it just went flat. But I think the bigger issue here is how good is Houston? Because Mac Jones comes in, and I'm up 23-6, right? I'm thinking, okay, I just won the Charger play. I got luckier than shit to win that one. And now I got this one in the bag, and I got to, I'll lay the 7 and I'll see if I can win the night game, right? So I could be 3-0. I'm thinking I'm feeling pretty good about it, right? I got 3-game win streak here. And boom, Mac Jones starts bringing them down the field, doesn't get the 2-point play. They go 3 and out. And then the next thing you know, it's 23-20, and they run the clock out. I don't think Houston's very good, Patrick. I really don't. This offense is bad. We didn't talk about Bryce Young was great. He was really good. Too many incompletions still, but he's really improved. And the difference between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud now, the way Stroud's playing, isn't as deep as everybody perceived it was last year.
And a great rally by Baker to beat Bryce Young after Bryce Young had a great drive towards the end of that game. It was a great one. Let's give props to our buddy Elliot, our producer here, because Steichen goes for 2 with 12 seconds. Richardson converts 25-24. The Colts beat the Pats.
Look, I am anti-go for 2, but in this case, I would have. I really would have, and I mean that sincerely, because I watched Gus Bradley's defense. And he gave up 447, 200 on the ground, 227 in the air. Like, seriously, if they would have not, you think in overtime, Gus would have stopped the Patriots? No chance.
No.
I would have, I think Steichen did the right, as much as I've been critical and say he did the right thing, because Gus would have beat him. That's a high school defense. I don't know how Gus would have, that's another plane ride Gus would have been taken home if Al was on the plane. That was as bad as it. They made New England look like the Rams. Horrible. Turnover. And then Mayo at the end of the game, he wasted his time out on a Kodak and he had a chance. I mean, that field goal was from 68 yards. They said it would have been good if it was 65. It was like 3 yards short. He just needed one more play.
The Seahawks beat the Jets 26-21. Look, Aaron wasn't good.
No, you're going to have to put him out of his misery. He's not going to bench himself, but here's what the Jets have to do. They have to bench him so they let him know that he's not coming back next year. I think they have
correct.
I think they just have to say, look, you're not, 21, you were great. 22, you weren't. And 24, you're worse than you were in 22. So we're going to move on. And you're the next guy who's getting fired here. You had a hell of a career. Maybe you have a back spasm and we'll put you on IR or something like that. We can configure something out, but we need to move on and you need to move on.
Agreed. 4 picks for Cousins. Michael Penix Jr. was trending on Twitter, and the Chargers beat the Falcons 17-13. I mean, that's the story coming out of it, those 4 picks. And a couple of bad ones, too.
Consider this, that the Chargers had one of the worst days offensively I've ever seen. They were putrid on offense. I mean, they couldn't do it. It was the best I've seen Atlanta play defense all year. They had 5 sacks in the game. They were playing as good as I've ever seen them defensively, and the Chargers still won the game. They still won the game. This idea that Atlanta has a great offensive line is garbage. And Cousins, when he gets hit, I'm not saying he's Carr, but there's some Carr elements to him.
Yep, no doubt. The Rams 6-6. They beat the Saints. Hill out with an injury. So this is what you have to look. McVay, difference maker. Harbaugh, difference maker. The games you shouldn't win, you kind of go, you get it done dirty, and now you're 500 and you're in the mix if you're the Rams.
And you're playing Ricky Fowler at the end. Did anybody believe Ricky Fowler was going to put the ball in the cup when it mattered? No, of course Carr wasn't going to. Of course he wasn't going to. Like if you're a Saint fan, he's never going to win. I mean, you just knew he wasn't. The guy's wide open. They called a play. I mean, I bet Clint Kubiak must want to pull his hair out. He called a play. The guy's wide open. Throw the ball to him. And he holds it for 18 hours. Oh, my God. You can't win with this guy. And they doubled down on his contract.
The 3-game losing streak for the Commanders comes to an end. Let me just say this. The Titans, they didn't want to be there. That was weird.
No.
Like, they didn't really show up. That way, legitimately from the jump, they didn't want to be there. That's on the coach. Yeah, to be fair.
It really is. Look, I think any general manager who hires the Zach Taylor scheme for your team, you're going to get soft, you're going to get softer, you're going to get softer, and you're going to have, to me, they were a rugged team at one time, but the more they play like this, it's not good. Look, everybody, I don't know about when the shows you did, but everybody were on the Titans this week. Everybody. Sharps were on the Titans. Everybody. You can't get me to take the Titans with Will Levis at quarterback. I can't do it. Just like you can't get me to take the with Gussie.
Uncle Gus. Let's get to
Uncle Gus got a new job. Can you imagine Florida State watched Central Florida's offense and said, "That's right, we got to have Gussie come call our plays."
Gussie. Well, we do have a college coach in our awards. Let's get to them. Week 13. We'll start with our crowning moments. And Tomlin, he does it. Let's get to the crowning moment.
Yep. I mean, look at Pittsburgh's offense. Give Arthur Smith. I mean, look, here's the thing about Arthur Smith, right? The last year with no quarterback, he's 6-6. Atlanta makes all these changes and they're 6-6 with a quarterback. If they would have just kept Arthur Smith and Ryan Nielsen and gave him a quarterback and got rid of the Super Bowl winning general manager Fontenot and sent McKay to Siberia, they probably would be winning more games. But this team is soft. The most points in the first half by Pittsburgh since week 10 of 2018. This was just unbelievable. They matched them point for point, 520 yards, and they were unbelievable. And let's face it, I don't know how Zach Taylor, how does he keep it? You talk about a guy done, it's ridiculous. Only because the Brown family won't fire him. But that team is the worst kind of team you could be, softer than paper.
Yep. Scored 38 points and lost again, 44-38. The Steelers all of a sudden have an offense. So your DraftKings crowning moment presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. The fraud of the week, Michael Lombardi. Fraud of the week.
We're done. We're done talking about the Giants on this podcast. I'm nauseum talking about them. And now let's put the Bengals and the Jets in that category. They're frauds of the week. Anybody who gets to the fraud of the week now, we're done talking about them. Okay? We're done with it. All right? That's it. I can't do it anymore. I can't keep complaining about the people are not going to listen to this pod if I keep complaining about Zach Taylor's lack of toughness and lack of physicality with his team. It's a joke. This is the lesson here is, can we remind each other of this come draft time? That you can have all the skill players you want. If you can't play defense and the physical and the offensive defensive lines, no matter how pretty you look, you're not going to win the prom.
Bengals, Jets, Giants. You're not going to hear about them on the GM Shuffle. Freddie Palermo, who had the best game plan this week.
I think the Chargers defense did by far. Look, they picked four off. I'll say this: Atlanta changed what they did defensively. They spent this bye week kind of recreating themselves, and I think they caught the Chargers by surprise. And I think that was one of the hard things they did. So for me, I think the Chargers' game plan defensively was outstanding. They really confused Cousins. 4 interceptions. This is 3 games in a row now. Cousins hasn't had a touchdown pass. And all this talk about how explosive that they are because they have Pitts, because they have Drake London, because they have Bijan. The guy who had the biggest play was Ray McLeod, who had 60 yards. This Falcon team is not tough. They're just not.
But coaching matters, and in a weird spot, Chargers traveling all the way to Atlanta, you walk out with a W. A lot of that has to.
Yeah, that's Russo said. You gotta pick the Chargers, and they gotta travel across the country. That's a strange pick right there, Mike. That's a strange pick right there, Mike.
For those that don't know, that's about as good as it gets. On the lam, your boy Ryan Day. How do you lose for that Michigan team?
He's not on the lam for losing to Michigan. To me, my indictment to him, as it just showed, if I were the athletic director of Ohio State and I watched my head coach stand on the sideline and ask an assistant coach as the players are on the field causing havoc, what's happening? And he's standing there in a complete daze. You got to go. You got to go. He can't belong in our social club. He's got to go. Get him out of here. It's bad enough you lost to Michigan, but you got no leadership. Your job is to influence young kids' lives. Your job is to lead young men, to show them what it's like to become a man, to teach them good values, right? That's your job as a college coach, right? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to improve it. And you're standing on the sideline watching and saying, what happened? That's a joke. That's a complete joke. He's got to go. You can't. How do you want, if I'm an Ohio State alum, that would piss me off more than losing to Michigan. Because that transcends itself into everything we do as an organization.
That's well put. Ryan Day, you're on the lam. Okay, let's do this before we get to how you mentioned it during the break. They're betting Denver. The number's up to 6.5 with Denver laying it.
It's unbelievable.
It really is.
And it's not weather related either. We're talking about they kick off. It's going to be 41 degrees. It'll go down into the low 30s. We have John Hussey, who's a great home referee. Hussey's record, just so we know, 89-61 for the home team ATS.
Would you lay it with the Denver Broncos tonight hosting Cleveland?
Russo took it at 5.5. It's up to 6.5 now. I think I don't know what to make. Jameis Winston's my false stage for
fans. We're all Browns fans tonight. Then
I want Denver to win, but I want him to win by 3. All right. He's a bad beat.
Walk-off field goal for you, Russo. Michael, great to be back. Enjoy the football tonight. We'll see you on Thursday.
Thanks, Patrick.